Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. The Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies is hereby called to order. Before we proceed in today's agenda, let me open briefly with some organizational matters. This is our first hearing for this Congress in this committee. For the record, during the Senate's plenary session last July 30, 2019, we elected Senators Sonny Angara and Win Gatchalian as our vice chairpersons. The committee members are Senator Panfilo Lacson, Senator Bongo, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Lito Lapid, and for the minority are Senators Risa Hontiveros and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. We also have an ex officio members as part of our rules of the Senate. We have Senate President Pro Temp Ralph Recto, Majority Leader Mig Zubiri, and Minority Leader Frank Drilon. We have no senators to acknowledge yet, but we will now move to the adoption of the rules. The committee is adopting and subscribing to the pertinent provisions of the rules of the Senate and rules of procedure governing inquiries in aid of legislation. These rules shall guide the operation and conduct of the meeting, hearings, and investigations of this committee. So with that out of the way, I would like to begin the hearing proper by saying that it is an undeniable fact that the birth of the internet technology has made everything easier and possible. Maari na tayong mag-shopping nang hindi pupunta sa mall o umorder ng pagkain nang hindi tumatawag sa telepono. But we also cannot deny that this convenience has become somewhat costly and sometimes confusing. Nitong mga nakaraang linggo, kasabay ng patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng ibang basic commodities, may nagsasabing nakaambaring tumaas ang singil ng mga ATM fees. According to the banks, this fee increase is needed for service maintenance. Sa halip na convenience, dahil hindi na natin kailangan pumunta sa bangko o maghintay ng banking day para makapag-withdraw ng pera, nagiging inconvenience minsan dahil blockbuster ang pila sa mga ATM. And it's even worse for OFWs who have to pay for additional charges when sending their hard-earned money to their families. Ang mga remittances na malaki, ang ambag sa pag-unlad ng ating ekonomiya ay kakaltasan pa. Ano na lang ang matitira kung hindi naman natin pag-iingatan na hindi abusuhin ito? The imposition of these additional fees is considered somewhat burdensome by majority of our bank consumers. That's why through Senate Bills 635, 438, 683, and Senate Resolution 96, we shall look into these fees and ensure that everyone's hard-earned money is protected through maybe, we're not sure, legislation. Because this is just still a hearing. Not everything is to be legislated. Some things are to be just thrashed out. Another matter we hope to address is the online lending fiasco, which has unabatedly proliferated in the past few months. Apparently, there are certain mobile applications that make it easier for someone to loan money but requires access to your contacts, camera, and other personal information before you can use the app. Hindi alam ng mga kawawang borrower na gagamitin ng mga ito para takutin sila sa oras na hindi sila makabayad. These apps message people in your contacts or upload your personal photos without your consent to pressure you to pay your debt. This is alarming. Not only is this a privacy issue, but an economic and security concern as this creates a financial environment that is disadvantageous to the Filipino. Through Senate Resolutions 121 and 136, we seek to investigate on these online lending applications and look into the legal mechanisms involved. Financial scams such as this are becoming prevalent in the country, hindi lamang sa online lending apps, kung hindi sa digital assets o currencies. So bumalik tayo sa online. Hindi din ako makapaniwala dito. May mga kilala ko, empleyado, na humiram dito. Tapos kukunin yung pangalan ng mga kamag-anak, mga kaibigan, mga katrabaho. At pag hindi nakabayad, yun ang kinukulit o pinapahiya. So tinanong ko naman kung ano yung terms ng pagbayad, hindi nga rin ma-explica ng empleyado ko eh. Ganun ang mayorya na humihiram dito. Pero sabi nga niya, malaki na yung nababayad niya. Mamaya ko na lang sasabihin ko anong pangalan ng kumpanya na yon. For our OFWs, we have also financial scams such as this are becoming prevalent in the country. Katulad na lamang nung nakaraang linggo kung saan sa isang raid ng Bureau of Immigration, 277 Chinese nationals ang nahuli dahil sa di umano'y illegal cryptocurrency operations. We welcome the digital economy with more than open arms, but there's a need to regulate virtual currencies as they can potentially be used for illegal activities, racketeering schemes, and other business scams. Senate Bill 1041 and Senate Resolution 129 will help institutionalize and standardize the rules on the regulation of these virtual currencies. This hearing is an opportunity to discuss possible legislation that would offer financial protection and security to Filipinos while enjoying the benefits of convenience brought by internet and technological advancement. With that said, I would like to welcome our resource persons. First of all, I'd like to thank Governor Jokno for being present here today. I know you're very busy, sir, but thank you for valuing the discussions in our committees and for being present to enlighten us. In fact, there are many issues that we will be discussing today that admittedly, even as senator or even chair of banks in particular, I still need to be enlightened. For example, the cryptocurrency issue. Madalas kaya tayo naloloko kasi hindi natin naiintindihan. Kaya ngayong araw, hindi lamang sa pagtatanong, kundi pagbibigay linaw sa mga issues, kaya ko kayo inimbitahan dito ngayon. So with that, may we ask our resource persons to please introduce themselves, beginning with you, sir, for the record.
Governor Ben Diokno, BSP.
Vicente de Villa III, BSP.
Dean Dos Santos, BSP.
Melchor Plabasan, BSP.
Ivy Grace Villasoto, National Privacy Commission.
Lito Villanueva, FinTech Alliance, PH.
Manuel Jr. from the SEC.
Good morning, ma'am. Commissioner Kelvin Lee of the SEC.
Don't we have any consumers present yet? Na-traffic yung mga consumers natin. Okay, so let's begin perhaps with an opening statement from our resource person, sir, Governor Jokno.
Thank you. Senator Grace Poe, members, other members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you for having us. We at the BSP have always considered the legislature to be our partners in the pursuit of our mandate. Our amended charter is a proof of this. With the support of the legislature, the charter of the Bangko Sentral was amended to strengthen the regulatory and supervisory authority of the central bank. This enhanced capability is ultimately aimed at improving the economic and financial well-being of Filipinos. Along with other related legislative measures, the amended BSP Charter is in line with our thrust of bringing central banking closer to the people. I see this hearing in the same light. This exercise serves as an avenue for the Bangko Sentral to share its peace while trying to make the people understand the various principles related to monetary and financial supervision, to make the people understand what central banking truly means. I've always considered myself a reformist, and today is another opportunity to look into our existing policies and structures in order to find better ways of doing things through our shared collaboration. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage the exploration of important financial sector reforms, including number one, easing of bank secrecy law, number two, agri-agra reform, and number three, the Financial Consumer Protection Bill. Nevertheless, I hope that today's hearing will yield positive outcomes in the area of banking and finance for the benefit of all Filipinos. Again, thank you for giving the Bangko Sentral this opportunity to be heard on many important issues. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Governor Jokno, for bringing to light also the other important measures we need to look at, as easing the bank secrecy law or the bank disclosure act that we had, and the consumer protection bill, and the agri-agra law. So I hope we can have time to get into those. I don't intend to keep this hearing very long. We have things to do. So do we have any other presentations before I throw in some questions?
Madam Chair, with your permission, due to the breadth of the topics that were sent to us for our comments, we have two opening statements, one on online lending, which I will discuss in a moment, and another on the cryptocurrencies, which our director will discuss after me, if with your permission.
Do you want to begin with the most complicated topics? Since we don't have our consumers here yet, I think that's what we need to do. Talk about the cryptocurrency and also the online. Anong gusto niyo unahin?
Madam Chair, the online lending presentation is there already. I can discuss that already with you.
Sige,
now.
let's
I can
start
go
with
through
that.
my opening statement on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So with
Commissioner
your
Lee, go
permission.
ahead, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Securities and Exchange Commission, I'd like to thank the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies for bringing to the fore various issues arising from the proliferation of online lending and for the opportunity to present the position of the SEC on this matter. At the outset, the SEC notes that online lending is not inherently illegal. Republic Act number 9474, or the Lending Company Regulation Act of 2007, requires a lending company to be established only as a corporation that is granted with a certificate of authority from us to operate. The law does not prescribe a particular business model or limit lending companies from employing new technologies to conduct their business. We also highlight the great potential that financial technology, or fintech, provides in our pursuit of financial inclusion and access to credit toward broad-based development and inclusive growth. And the use of fintech is consistent with the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, which recognizes how effective access to basic financial services such as savings, payments, credits, and investments could make a substantially positive difference in people's lives. It also aligns with the state policy embodied in the Lending Company Regulation Act to regulate the establishment of lending companies and to place their operation in a sound, efficient, and stable condition, to derive the optimum advantages from them as an additional source of credit. At the same time, however, the SEC takes note of the mounting complaints against certain lending companies. So to protect both the integrity of legitimate lending companies and the interests of borrowers, the SEC has been relentless in its crackdown on informal lenders, as well as those engaging in predatory, abusive, and unfair lending practices. To date, we have revoked the registration of 2,081 lending companies. This year alone, we revoked the certificates of authority of 2 lending companies and the certificates of registration to operate as a corporation of 837 companies. We also recently issued a cease and desist order against the owners and operators of 19 online lending apps for failure to incorporate and or secure a certificate of authority to operate as a financing or lending company. 11 additional erring online lenders were halted by the SEC through another CDO, which we issued last Friday, September 20, 2019. In addition, we have issued warnings against several companies engaged in online lending activities without the necessary licenses. Now, alongside our enforcement actions, the SEC is exhausting its rulemaking power to tackle nefarious lending activities in practice in the country. We have issued SEC Memorandum Circular Number 18, Series of 2019, which is the prohibition on unfair debt collection practices of financing companies and lending companies. These include instances of public shaming and invasion of privacy. To address another area of concern on determining the legitimacy of the owners of online lending apps, the SEC issued Memorandum Circular Number 19, Series of 2019, which requires financing and lending companies to register their online platform and their business names and report them to the SEC, all the existing and prospective online platforms. In parallel to that, the SEC has consistently advocated for responsible borrowing. Moreover, we regularly advise the public to be mindful of the imposable interest, penalties, and other charges before entering into a loan contract or other credit arrangements. Now, all relevant information about financing and lending companies were made available and accessible to the public in a web corner we created on our website. There you will see, among others, the list of all registered financing companies, the list of all registered lending companies with information on their interest rates imposed by lending companies, advisories, and a complaint section. Now, to reiterate, the SEC shares the view that the unhampered and unregulated proliferation of online lending companies create a disadvantageous financial atmosphere for Filipinos. This, however, must be viewed and balanced with the state's goal of financial inclusion and access to credit. If regulated and used correctly, online lending platforms may well accomplish and live up to the state's declared policy and contribute to the sound development of the economy. In this light, the SEC recommends the crafting of a stronger and more comprehensive legislation, or at least the amendment of the Lending Company Registration Act, to enable the state through the SEC to effectively police lending companies that operate through online lending platforms and protect the public from abusive practices. The SEC also recommends the amendment of Republic Act number 8556, or the Financing Company Act of 1998, as more financing companies adopt fintech, and considering that the 21-year-old law may no longer reflect and respond adequately to the present circumstances. In addition, may we at the SEC also suggest the amendment of Republic Act number 3765, or the Truth in Lending Act, to increase the prescribed penalties and to effectively carry out the declared policy of the state, which is to protect the citizens from lack of awareness of the true cost of credit to the user by assuring full disclosure of such cost. As we move to strengthen the regulatory environment for lending companies, the SEC underscores the importance of involving and engaging the industry through regular consultations with lending and financing companies and fintech groups. Through discussions, emerging issues may be threshed out, and comprehensive solutions can be effectively designed and implemented. In closing, the SEC reiterates its commitment to protecting the public from exploitative and abusive practices of some lending and financing companies, while supporting the development of a sector that could play an important role in realizing our collective vision of a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life by helping provide Filipinos with effective access to financial services. And with that, I end my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Before we proceed with some questions or perhaps another presentation, I'd like to thank and welcome our colleagues, the minority leader, the respectable minority leader, Franklin Relon. Thank you, sir. And of course, Senator General Bato de la Rosa. Sir, ibang mood ng hearing na to. Medyo hindi public order. Ah, pero dati kasi public order ako eh. So baka naman someday ikaw naman ang banking. So ano? So oh. Iba time warp dito, iba. Mas kalma ang mood dito. Mga bangko-bangko lang to. Okay. Do we have another presentation from the SEC or the BSP? For what particular topic, sir? Okay. Aside from the explanation of, aside from your recommendations, would you have a presentation of what exactly is cryptocurrency as you interpret it to be? Kasi minsan ang dami na nanganganak-nganak na to eh. Meron ba?
It would be included in the opening statement, Madam Senator.
Sige, go ahead.
If I
Go
may.
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. First, allow us to thank the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies for what we believe is another opportunity to push for the development of an enabling regulatory environment for a fast emerging asset class. Developments in distributed ledger technologies have led to the emergence of various types of digital assets, including tokens for capital raising, and crypto assets for the facilitation of economic transactions or the transfer of value. Okay. This creates a new set of unique challenges for regulators worldwide. Without regulated entities controlling the creation and use of digital assets, particularly crypto assets, the system is open to significant financial crime and other risks. So it should be noted, Madam Chair, that whereas a legal tender is issued by sovereign governments and is stored and transferred by banks and other regulated FIs on behalf of users, digital assets, on the other hand, particularly crypto assets, allow users to create, store, and transfer them without a third party. So, probably the need to look if there is a necessity to provide for regulation. Similarly, the evolving technology led to the growth of fundraising activities and exchange or platform business models different from the existing regulated ones, such as the PSE or the PDEX, and even the initial public offering, which are actually governed by Republic Act number 8799 or the SRC. This potential influx of digital assets activities and other digital assets related financial services activities give rise to unregulated activities conducted in the Philippines. It is therefore necessary that these players and service providers engaging in digital assets activities be duly regulated in the interest of the public and investor protection. So, the SEC is proposing to regulate digital assets that qualify as securities as well as those being advertised as investments and acting like securities. In this regard, we have drafted rules governing digital assets offerings, not unlike an IPO, and the digital asset exchanges, not unlike the way we would regulate the Philippine Stock Exchange or the Philippine Dealing Exchange Corporation. The proposed rules on DAO, formerly referred to as initial coin offering in the earlier version, have undergone 2 public consultations. The draft rules on DAE, meanwhile, have been issued for initial public consultation last July 15, 2019. We are currently collating and evaluating documents which will be considered in refining the proposed rules. The Commission recognizes the wide scope of digital assets and the fact that not every digital asset may fall under the definition of security under our purview as overseer of the capital market. In this light, the Commission will take charge of regulating all digital assets that may be used in public fundraising activities. Our proposed rules provide for a catch-all mechanism to cover the rampant advertising and marketing of digital assets as a means of sourcing of funds. So, in our opening statement, including the position that the SEC has provided this August body, we have the definition of what a digital asset is, and we have also the proposed rules on digital asset offering, as well as the definition of digital asset exchange, and the proposed rules on digital asset exchange. Um, at this point, the SEC emphasizes that we do not support a ban in cryptocurrencies and other digital assets. The Commission views the rise of digital assets with respect to its mandate of developing the corporate sector and capital market toward the democratization of wealth. No less than the SRC empowers the SEC to promote national economic development by encouraging competitiveness in the market through the promulgation of rules for the registration and licensing of innovative and other trading markets for innovative securities, securities of small, medium growth and venture enterprises, and technology-based ventures. Our position is also consistent with our national strategy for financial inclusion, which is integral to our inclusive development agenda. Thank you, Madam Chair. As
Before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Chair of the Economic Affairs Committee, and who has filed also a bill or a resolution regarding this bill regarding online lending and cryptocurrency, digital assets. Senator Marcos. Senator Drilon has a question.
Yes, I was particularly listening to the presentation of Commissioner Lee proposing a number of amendments to various laws. In the last Congress, we worked hard and enacted the revised corporation code. The first question is, have you issued the rules and regulations implementing the revised corporation code? And second question, we worked, we widened the powers of the SEC upon the advice of the SEC, of the commission at that time. Would these expanded powers not be sufficient to address the concerns that you have raised in your presentation, Commissioner Lee? This Republic Act 11232, or the revised corporation code, as we said, expanded considerably the powers of the SEC. Are these not sufficient at this point to address your immediate concerns?
Mr. Senator, good morning. In relation to your question, on the first question in relation to the implementing rules, our position at the SEC is that technically there is no need for separate implementing rules and regulations for the revised corporation code. What instead we have been doing is we have been issuing separate memorandum circulars, operationalizing certain provisions of the provisions of the revised corporation code. Now, so that answered the first question. In relation to your second question, Senator, sir, we believe that our focus in relation to the recommendations is more with the penal provisions, in particular some of the penalties in relation to abuses of of lending and financing companies. So in relation, however, to powers to revoke, things of the like, we believe we do have those powers. It's just that we're moving to the next step. Instead of administrative, we were asking more more penalties in relation to the criminal aspects, if ever, Senator.
It's basically on the criminal aspect and particularly on imprisonment and fines. Yes,
Senator. Yes, sir.
that's where you want stronger enforcement powers.
In effect, yes, Senator. If I may point out, Section 12 of the Lending Company Regulation Act currently allows for fines, only allows us to to file in court and request for imposable fines of around 50,000, I believe, maximum.
Per violation?
Yes,
Or?
yes, Mr. Senator. So that's not much. However, it does provide for 6 months to 12 years per count as well, at the discretion of the court. But in terms of fines, clearly it does need to be increased in light of the
But
circumstances.
imprisonment is anywhere from 6 years to.
No, Mr. Senator. If I may, Section 12 provides 6 months to 10 years, if I recall correctly.
6 months to 10 years.
Yes, sir.
And you feel that that kind of imprisonment is not deterrent enough?
If I may, Mr. Senator, that we have to undergo court procedures first in order to get there, to
Well,
have
yes,
the imposed.
You cannot avoid court procedures
Yes, sir.
because that is a criminal penalty. So
Yes, sir.
I don't think I'm prepared to support the proposition that the SEC be given criminal jurisdiction on criminal cases. They
Yes,
have to go to court. Now, so it's a question of your wanting more teeth by having a longer imprisonment, or are you also saying that the SEC should be allowed to impose imprisonment?
No, Mr. Senator. More in relation to the administrative fines, because clearly the 50,000 peso cap is not sufficient.
Here's my
Yeah.
other question, Senator Zulon, if I may. Since the online app, okay, is registered with the SEC, who is usually held liable? Because it's a company. Who will be imprisoned in case there's a finding of fraud or abuse?
Madam Senator, just to clarify, part of the problem we have right now at the SEC is a lot of these online lending apps are not even registered with us. A lot of them go directly to Google Play, to the App Store, without
that's
bothering to go
precisely
through
it,
us.
because I know what you're trying to say.
Yes, madam.
Maybe the penalty, but to find somebody responsible, an actual personality to imprison, that's the problem. Even there's no personality in a corporation sometimes that you can pinpoint as the one who will take the liability or the imprisonment. Is that So what's going to happen? For the penalty, at least you can impose that on a company, correct? Or whether or not the company is registered with the SEC.
The part of the problems with our investigation sometimes, Madam Senator, sometimes they're not even registered as a company as well.
Therefore, they're
So,
not covered by this particular law that you're mentioning.
in theory, it will be difficult to impose the penalties on some of them, because considering that we have no records of who exactly they are, where they are. However, for the ones that are registered with us, then clearly we can impose the appropriate penalties.
In the presentation earlier, I'd like to acknowledge first the presence of Senator Francis Tolentino. Good morning, sir. In your presentation earlier, you pinpointed several companies that were already shut down or
Issued to
penalized.
clarify, sorry, Madam Senator, to clarify, we issued cease and desist orders against them,
So,
essentially requiring them to cease operations. And if I may, to clarify on that point, those 19 and the 11 last week, these are companies that are not registered with the SEC, meaning they're not even incorporated, nor do they have the certificate of authority as far as we're aware of. The certificate of authority is our secondary license, which is what allows them to operate as a lending company.
so is there a provision in the law? Please enlighten us because this is very specific to you. If they're not, if they're operating without a permit from the SEC, are there penalties that we can impose on them? What in
Yeah,
particular?
yes, Madam Senator. The one I mentioned earlier, Section 12 of the Lending Company Regulation Act, it essentially it imposes the fine or the imprisonment of 6 months to 10 years for those who operate lending activities without our secondary license, without our certificate of authority. That one's actually a fairly prima facie case, because all you have to prove in court is that you never had the authority from us in the first place.
Section 12 of what particular?
Sorry, the Lending Company Regulation Act, Madam Senator.
Okay.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
if I may.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, although we've been running back and forth from different meetings. I filed a very rough draft bill in recognition of digital assets, specifically because of this problem. And our sense is that at the very least, we should recognize and register digital assets as legitimate sources of e-money in the case of BSP, because it's a little suspect at the moment. Obviously, e-money and payments are clearly under the BSP mandate, but given the FATF and the other warnings that beyond bills and coins, the BSP really has no jurisdiction, as well as the SEC for virtual assets. And I know that two memos are already circulating the different groups. So the sense is basically that we should at least register these assets as legitimate. And I think it's very, very important that some legislation finally recognizes them. Perhaps we're not yet at the point where we can regulate because it's in a very infant, incipient stage. But virtual assets are acquiring a bad name because of the dark web, because of the Silk Road, and all these other dubious services. But I think it is important to realize that this could be a very, very lucrative source of profit for so many Filipinos, as they've discovered in Thailand and in Singapore, and particularly in the jurisdiction of Wyoming in the United States. Fiat to fiat is one thing, but fiat to virtual is another issue. I think also there are some, let us say, suspect transactions being undertaken, or let me say, questionable or perhaps unusual transactions in the issuance of the CESA, the Cagayan Economic Zone Authority, issuing a total of 37 recognitions or permits for 37 exchanges. Um, this is largely unlegislated, unrecognized, and unregulated by anyone. I'm a little nervous about this following the Bangladesh and card smuggling issues that derive from my neck of the woods. Finally, I think digital assets need to be recognized as a possible alternative in financial inclusion for our huge population that is largely unbanked. Perhaps this will be their only chance to finally get a credit rating, access to financing, and capital. So this is all we seek to do, to simply recognize these digital assets, and perhaps in the future, through IRR and other memos, be able to regulate them in a coherent and logical fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marcos. You pointed something very disturbing, and I would like to hear the CESA, and please explain. So you issue these permits to companies dealing with cryptocurrency. Am I understanding this correctly, Senator Marcos?
Yes, that's correct. That's at least what we read in the news, that Financial Technology Solutions offshore virtual currency exchange business permits were issued as of last year. It's unnerving, of course, because the suspicion is that all manner of money laundering and dubious transactions are being undertaken.
And they are not even within the CESA boundary. Senator Tolentino.
Perhaps the Securities and Exchange Commission should likewise affirm that they issued the registration papers for the Millennial Global Corporation allegedly involved in this as a Ponzi scam.
The Ponzi scam.
So you
If
can
I
correlate, but with the permission of the chair, Attorney David should answer first.
Yes, committee members. Yes, Senator. We did issue these licenses to these offshore companies. Initially, we had this number, but right now we already have the number 42 licensees. 25 and 16, 25 principal licensees and 16 regular licensees. Just to clear out the framework, we do have a regulatory framework in the CESA that provides us the authority to issue these licenses as coordinated with as treated as our locators. Back in March 2018, we released the CESA FinTech and Offshore Virtual Currency Exchange rules, which allows us to issue these licenses to offshore companies that operate outside the Philippine jurisdiction and do not transact with any Filipino or any Philippine entity. With this, one of our requirements is for these principal licensees to establish a Philippine branch, to which the jurisdiction of the Philippines could now be activated, and through their authorized service providers be serviced within our zone. While we do understand that just the news recently would say that some of our locators are operating outside the zone, we would like to clarify that this is a temporary measure from our side, which we publicly announced last year, that because of the current circumstances in the zone, since we do not have the current facilities to house these businesses, we coordinated with the local government units to house them near our Cagayan Economic Zone.
So basically, you're allowing yourselves to extend your territory. Di ba that's the whole point? They're contained in a particular area.
Yes, madam.
And right. But you have the authority to designate an area as a CESA zone without a higher authority approving it?
That is not our intention, madam. Our intention is to temporarily authorize specific locations near our office, near our main office in Mandaluyong, for which to house them temporarily while we are building the facilities in Cagayan.
I don't think, is that within your mandate? You can do that?
Yes, it is in our mandate through our CESA charter, madam.
I know. So
Yes.
CESA can actually designate as many locations as they want as a CESA zone.
No, madam. This is again just a temporary
I know,
measure. Yes, ma'am.
I know what you're saying, but they're already enjoying the benefits of being in a CESA area. Eh wala pa nga eh, temporary pa lang. So that means if you've already filled up your maximum, that's the reason why you're already given a certain limit to it. Because once you fill that up, then that means the government might not actually be enjoying any advantage to having all of those companies anymore. Eh, what if lahat bigyan ninyo ng temporary permit, mag-set up kung saan-saan as a temporary location. It doesn't make sense. If you only have like 2,000 square meters, for example, you can give as many temporary permits as possible. What's your limit? And then, have you coordinated with the SEC with regards to the requirements if they have actually complied with them before setting up with you?
Yes, madam. In fact, last year around July and August, we had coordination meetings with the SEC, the AMLC, regarding this matter, and with the BSP. With regard to this, we coordinated with them. That is why one of our requirements is for these companies to set up a Philippine branch, to which that is where we could acquire the proper jurisdiction with these offshore companies, ma'am.
Okay, so for example, this company that was being mentioned, Millennial,
Golden Millennial.
so do
Golden
they have
Millennial.
an SEC permit and also from the BSP?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, in response to your question and the question of Senator Tolentino, to our knowledge, Millennium Global Quick Pay is not a corporation incorporated or registered with the SEC. What was registered with the SEC is a corporation called Grapefruit Incorporated, which is incorporated in the Philippines as a data center or back office service provider, a BPO. And apparently, it is this Grapefruit Incorporated that was located inside CESA. If I may also quickly add, it is true that CESA had meetings with us, the BSP, and the other members of the Anti-Money Laundering Council last year because we were also concerned about this notion of foreign entities registering in the CESA zone without going through SEC or BSP vetting. The agreement at the time was for CESA to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the other financial regulatory agencies so we could have joint oversight with them and even observe their regulation of these entities in the CESA zone. But until now, there has been no draft MOA presented to us by CESA. So we have not been able to move forward and jointly regulate these locators in the CESA zone.
So did you understand what he was saying? So this grapefruit and then the Millennium Global is, I mean, it's registered differently and the function is probably not the same. So does that warrant a cancellation of their permit?
But,
Or
Madam Chair, we're now undertaking an investigation into the activity of Grapefruit. So our understanding based on news reports is that Grapefruit is the back office or the business process outsourcing provider of this Millennium Global Quick Pay, which is located in China. So yun po, we're trying to determine whether or not Grapefruit Incorporated is only acting as a back office provider or is actually engaged in regulated activities such as the offering for sale of securities. Yun pong hindi po namin na-determine, we're still undergoing investigation.
pag ganun, Governor Jokno, dapat merong ding registration sa BSP.
I'd like to make 2 points. Number
Opo.
one, it's
Thank you,
not registered. Millennial or Grapefruit, whatever, is not registered with BSP. I think he's referring more to AMLC, not rather than BSP, because those two are distinct institutions. While I chair AMLC, it's not BSP. All right.
Madam
Siguro
Chair, the AMLC has no knowledge of the transactions being undertaken by either Grapefruit or Millennium or the 48 permits issued by CESA. While it is true that CESA charter allows it to open locations in many, many places outside of the Cagayan area, I'm not certain which provision allows it to issue digital assets permits.
Okay, moving along. Are you ready, Attorney David?
I'm currently looking for the specific provision, ma'am. We do have it in place.
Okay, while you're searching for that particular provision, anybody else would
Yeah.
like to weigh in on this?
Yeah. Chairman, I would just like to respond to your query if the CESA entities are required to register with the BSP. if their operations fall within our definition of virtual currency exchange, then they need to register with the BSP and they need to go through our vetting process. Unfortunately, or fortunately, anyway, according to based on the press releases, they are operating offshore. It means they're dealing with foreign clients, not clients in the Philippines. And somehow, we have already shielded the financial system from these players which did not go through the vetting process because no banks, I mean, would honor a certificate of registration that was issued. I mean, if it's not issued by the BSP, then no banks would honor, yeah, would transact or would deal with players that are not registered with the BSP.
Yeah, just to wait on that, Madam Chair. Yes, while it is correct that
Madam Chair, I think that the question you posed was
The
for him
power.
to cite the specific
Yes.
provision.
About
Not to
with
give
regard,
your opinion.
yes,
To weigh in on the
yes,
other's opinion.
yes, Senator. Section 6 of our CESA Charter, Republic Act 7922, provides that we have the power to approve, accept, accredit, and allow any local or foreign business, enterprise, or investment in the zone subject only to such rules and regulations as CESA may promulgate from time to time in conformity with the provisions of this act and the limitations provided in the Constitution.
Madam
Pursuant,
Chair, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, if I can remember it correctly, although I was not a member, during the 16th and 17th Congress, CESA was chastised by the Senate for overreaching insofar as giving permits for uh, intruding upon the functions of PAGCOR, so to speak, at that time. Now we are here again with the chief cryptocurrency officer of CESA, apparently showing that they have overstepped again, uh, stepping on the functions of BSP, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and AMLAC. So kailan ba titigil to, Madam Chair, na they have arrogated upon themselves the functions of other agencies, interpreting their own rules with finality and exposing the general public to other scams, Ponzi, pyramiding, etc., similar to the recently exposed Millennial Global scam, wherein 277 were arrested by the CIDG. So, Madam Chair, kailan matatapos to na sila na rin yung nag-interpret ng rules? Sino may oversight po sa kanila? Including customs, Madam Chair. Ilang balik na si Presidente ron naggigiba ng mga sports cars. So, I think that's the one of the side issues that was unraveled in your committee hearing, Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think it's apparent that the CESA Charter probably requires looking into. It's infinitely more powerful than the BSP, the AMLAC, or the SEC combined, considering what we've heard this morning.
Thank you for pointing those out to my colleagues. Actually, that would be another topic, perhaps with another committee. But in the meantime, maybe we can ask. I'm sorry.
I think with economic affairs po, because it's an economic
affairs
zone.
or GOCC.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
the economic zones. Yeah.
So maybe what we can have now is what can BSP do? I'd say, and the SEC with regards to this, can you direct them to stop operations? Or you said you were currently investigating. So after you've investigated, what jurisdiction would you have to stop operations of this particular company if they're not compliant?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This Grapefruit Incorporated, which is the locator in the CESA zone, is in fact registered with us as a corporation. If we can determine that they are engaged in activities that require an SEC license, like for example, in the offer or sale of securities abroad, whether it's in digital format or not, or if it's acting outside the corporate charter of the purpose of the corporation, we can seek a prosecution under the Securities Regulation Code and or a revocation of the corporate charter for this Grapefruit Incorporated if we can determine that they are acting beyond its registration as a BPO.
Thank you. Director De Villa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and then thank you, sir. If I may add in collaboration to what Commissioner Eva was saying, was that perhaps a collaboration between SEC, BSP, and CESA, because there may be transactions that are actually going beyond what CESA has actually authorized, particularly on the transfer of funds from a registered CESA operator to a bank, because there may be cases that, though not yet confirmed, that the operator may be using another name to open a bank and not necessarily the corporate name whereby the license was issued by CESA. So maybe moving forward, a collaboration within that effect. I think Commissioner Ep did mention something about in past discussions about a MOA or some kind of undertaking. So I think that perhaps maybe something that can be also
Who will supervise this get together of the three different government agencies for a memorandum of agreement?
Madam
Who-
Chair,
who
if I
can take
may,
the lead? Yes.
just by way of fair warning, the BSP charter very clearly indicates bills and coins. Aside from e-money and e-payments, the question would arise if BSP would have jurisdiction over virtual assets beyond e-payments. Whereas with the SEC, I think electronic monies are actually covered by law, which is why I am invoking that we take a look at recognizing and registering all these virtual currencies and their operators.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would just like to clarify that both BSP and SEC have been adopting what we call activity-based regulation. So if you are, or supervision, if you are using crypto assets for, let's say, performing or for doing regulated activities, then you are regulated by either the BSP or SEC. Say, for investment or for lending, then you will be regulated by the BSP. If you're doing using crypto for remittance payment, then you are regulated by the BSP. So it's the activity, it's the regulated activity that I mean that it's not the currency itself, because at the end of the day we don't given the forthcoming rules of SEC, they will not call it digital currency. It will now be called digital asset.
With all due respect, I think the distinction is not the transaction. The distinction is whether this is virtual or backed up by fiat. If it's backed up by fiat, I think recognition can be made by the BSP clearly, because at the end of the day, it's based on fiat currency. However, if the transaction, no matter what the transaction is fiat to fiat, then I think it is beyond your charter.
Or charter.
I'm sorry, if,
Yeah, yeah.
if it is virtual to virtual, it makes no difference what the transaction is. It is already beyond the BSP charter,
If
because
it's,
it does not involve bills and coins.
yeah, at present, virtual to virtual is very hard to regulate in a digital virtual environment. That's why we're only concerned about the interface of digital asset with the regulated financial system, because that's the one that can be regulated. If you go virtual to virtual, I think, I mean, we need to revisit the new FATF rules if that can be possibly covered by
Yeah.
possible amendments.
It's almost like regulating the internet at some point,
Yeah.
right?
It's like telling we will regulate what we cannot regulate.
Yes, that's correct. But at the same time, we're also aware while regulation is probably too early in the day, I think the legitimate operators also need to be encouraged, given that they're the brave new world for microfinancing and inclusivity.
I see that with technology, sometimes the government plays catch up. We need to really understand the situation so that banking and financial institutions can be accessible to the public, but at the same time, they're also protected from abuse. So this is the middle ground that we're trying to find here. Senator Tolentino.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think that the Bangko Sentral issued BSP Resolution 944, regulating but not recognizing. And I understand the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas allowed the Union Bank of the Philippines to engage in similar activities. Siguro mas magandang malinawan ito. I have here a copy of the Japanese Digital assets law. Ang layo nung sa atin eh. Yung sa 944 natin, bukod sa kulang yung penalties, maraming gap. So I think really legislation would be needed here. But Madam Chair, can we ask from the Bangko Sentral, ano yung 944? Ano yung recently issued circular allowing the Union Bank of the Philippines? Because that will not prevent the other banks from joining the foray of also requesting for similar clearances.
So what we approve for, sorry, Madam Chair, what we approve for Union Bank, they're actually using crypto for delivering payments and remittances. That's why it's a regulated activity, because they're adapting a platform that is quite different from the usual platform that they are adapting in order to deliver these services. So they are using cryptocurrency in order to facilitate the delivery of payments and remittance, but that cryptocurrency is only limited within their own ecosystem. The BSP does not recognize this as legal tender we don't recognize this as legal tender. It's only used in the, so it's like they just tokenize the money to ensure that the payments can be, or remittance can be delivered in real time or near real time.
You know, before we go further into this discussion, we have a few other concerns here that also touches the lives of many. In fact, it's more pedestrian in the way that this is in our daily transaction, ATM fees, the Remittance Act, and online lending, aside from cryptocurrency. But before we leave this topic, I'm sure there are more questions. May we ask the chairman of the FinTech Alliance to please make a presentation exactly so we know the scope of cryptocurrency before we start dealing with a deeper discussion on this.
Thank you,
Do you have
Madam
a
Chair.
presentation?
Yeah,
Do you have
but
some
before the
slides?
presentation, we would like to make a statement on
Okay, go
regarding this the agenda for this committee. Thank you for inviting us this morning to share our insights. Briefly, FinTech Alliance PH is comprised of leading digital companies generating over 90% of FinTech-initiated transactions volume in the country today, with more than 40 global and local partners. It is the Philippines' largest collaboration among shakers and movers in the digital space operating in the country to create value aligned with sustainable development goals, in addressing poverty through inclusive digital finance, to further stimulate human-centric and green innovations in order to better promote shared growth and to foster thought leadership while creating an environment and contributing to the country's economic and social development. Just last week, we led in institutionalizing the Code of Ethics in the digital space and adoption of Code of Conduct among its member companies in support of and in compliance with existing laws and regulations, particularly on promoting transparency, consumer protection, digital literacy, compliance, data protection, and security. This was after several online lenders figured in data privacy violations and unethical collection practices. This was done in collaboration with the BSP, SEC, NPC, AMLC, Insurance Commission, DTI, and BIR. There's an ideal within the ever-dynamic fintech landscape, regulation following innovation. For the most part, our enabling regulations have proven advanced compared to most international equivalents, but there's always room for improvement. There has been a number of terminologies used by other countries in describing cryptocurrencies, which are based on the same type of decentralized technology known as blockchain with inherent encryption. Some of the terms used by countries to reference cryptocurrency include digital currency for Argentina, Thailand, and Australia, virtual commodity for Canada, China, and Taiwan, crypto token for Germany, payment token in Switzerland, cyber currency in Italy and Lebanon, electronic currency in Colombia, and virtual asset in Honduras and Mexico. Excuse me. FinTech Alliance is carrying out research into digital currencies and the technology that supports them. FinTech Alliance is also assessing crypto assets for the Philippines' financial stability and its attendant risk. Crypto assets do pose risk to investors, and anyone buying crypto assets should be prepared to lose all their money. We continue to monitor developments in this area and would recommend that a crypto assets task force be created to work alongside BSP and SEC and other regulatory bodies to explore crypto assets and its underlying technology, assess the associated risk and potential benefits, and set out the path forward with respect to regulations in the Philippines. BSP has already institutionalized its test and learn approach or regulatory sandbox on emerging technologies in its Financial Supervision Forum, but the Crypto Assets Task Force with industry players would make it more comprehensive, expansive, and focused. In the light of rapid developments in the market for crypto assets and the substantial potential applications of distributed ledger technology or DLT, and growing evidence of the risks associated with crypto assets, it is imperative that we launch the Crypto Assets Task Force as part of the government fintech sector strategy to develop an approach to crypto assets and DLT that maintains the Philippines' international reputation as a safe and transparent place to do business in financial services, ensures high regulatory standards in financial markets, protects consumers, guards against threats to financial stability that could emerge in the future, and allows those innovations in the financial sector that play in the rules to thrive. And with this, we would like to introduce Ida, our fellow trustee in the Alliance, to present what cryptocurrency is all about. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Senator Po, rest of the senators, BSP, SEC. Just quickly, Ida Chongson, I'm a trustee of Fintech Alliance as well. Okay, we just want to give a 101 on what is digital money. Okay, digital money, when we're talking about that, we're talking about a lot of fiat at the moment. And what is fiat? Fiat is a local currency. It's Philippine pesos used in the digital world. So when it comes to the Paymaya, GCash, the transfer, the lending, and that sort of thing, that is at the moment, we are using fiat. Okay, so what is crypto? Crypto, as mentioned, it's actually divided into three, just in layman's terms. Crypto came from the word encrypted. Also, it is in exchange of a value, and it is decentralized. In the global community, and we're talking about the borderless world already, the crypto is being used in three areas. One is called the investments, which is now under the coin offering, or now called data asset token offering, or yeah. And the other one is called under the rewards, which is called the utility token. And then the other one is the creation of the ecosystem. If I may just brief on this, if a company is looking for funding, like similar to a bond, they can actually go to the space and do coin offering or data asset offering. With that, you can separate it into two. One is, will they be owner of the company in essence, like shares? That is called security offering, and that's within the now being looked at by SEC and BSP under the data asset. The other one is rewards. Rewards is similar to the Pacquiao coin, the Pac coin. That is in by way of like similar to Mabuhay Miles. It's similar to an exchange, like for argument's sake, a VIP treatment to a Pacquiao fight. And
How
that's
do you avail of
rewards.
that? I've heard about it, but how does the Pacquiao coin work? How do you get rewards for that?
Right. Basically, you can buy a coin. It could be like if it's a Pacquiao coin, you buy his coin in exchange of course, the Philippine pesos. You buy his coin and you get a literal either a wallet coin or whatever use that they're going to put in. I believe it's in a wallet format. With that, when you have sufficient number of points, like Mabuhay Miles, for argument's sake, then you can avail of going to his fight for free. You can have a backstage pass. That's the rewards concept. The rewards concept is not regulated.
So there's no guarantee. They don't make any promises like if you buy a certain number that you will get.
It depends on
this reward.
yes, ma'am. It depends on the contract or the arrangement, what is available in that particular coin.
So how are they able to? Because I'm sure that many of our countrymen actually avail of this, but they're not very aware of this setup. So how are they able to send the money to avail of that Pacquiao coin? Do they wire it to a company? Do they?
Okay, limited the use of the Pacquiao coin. The expanded version under the information set out is they will eventually have payment system as well, and maybe even the security token. But for now, it's limited only on the rewards component. From what I understand of the rewards component on the Pacquiao coin is basically a, um, a discount or a point system.
But to avail of that, they have to
Ah,
pay.
I see.
Correct?
It could be
So do they use a
similar
credit
to,
card?
pwede
Do
ma'am
they-
yan, similar to again, a Buhay Miles or FSP, a frequent shopper. The more you use it, the more points you get. But this time it's not points, it's by way of token.
Okay. Yes, but with the Mabuhay Miles, before you can get the miles,
You have
actually
to purchase
a
several
ticket.
tickets.
So, I want to see how the BSP will come in to regulate because of the transaction.
Okay.
So, what are they buying, or what are they spending on to get the rewards?
Yes,
on the,
there's an option on the utilities coin that you physically purchase it, then you get the coin. In the case of a real estate company overseas, it's a timeshare concept. You pay, you get timeshare, but instead of a timeshare, you get a token. In exchange with that token, is similar to like Balisin, you get 2 weeks free using that. So in the case of Pacquiao, it's the usage, either by way of usage or by purchasing the coin. And when you purchase it, then
so you
yeah.
purchase the coin.
You
How
can
do you
purchase.
How do you purchase it? Do you use a credit card? Do you?
In
I'm
the
sorry,
digital
I've not
ma'am,
encountered it. I've
okay.
heard about it.
In the digital space, it's via the normal one when it comes to the tokenization is by way of Ethereum. Ether, it's a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Yes.
So is this regulated by? Are they registered with the SEC? This particular.
The Pacquiao coin,
Not-
Your Honor, is not registered.
Because it's launched in the US.
Being offered outside the Philippines, Your
So a Filipino here in the Philippines
Honor.
cannot
we would
avail of that.
we would cannot avail. Madam Chair, under the rules that we intend to promulgate very soon, and we've already put out for comment, any digital asset or token, we're using the term digital asset instead of cryptocurrency because it's the broadest. And it avoids the misnomer of the use of the word coin or currency. Iisipin ng mga tao ay pera yon, hindi naman po ito pera. As described, this particular token gives you certain reward benefits, discounts involving boxing matches. Under the rules that we have drafted and we have already prepared, all digital offerings will be scrutinized, must be registered or must be scrutinized first by the SEC to determine if there's any form of investment taking. If we are able to determine that there's investment taking, then they will be regulated like securities, or as what they're going to say shortly, securities tokens. If they have no investment taking, if there's no character of investment taking, then we would not regulate that token. In this particular case, for example, Your Honor, it sounds more like a reward system that would be regulated by the DTI, something like Sodexo, or gift checks, may discounts. Now, as mentioned already by my colleagues from the BSP, SEC and BSP are actually coordinating on this kind of regulation. We are coordinating primarily on protecting investors from unlicensed investments. The BSP is engaged when there is a conversion, as you were asking, Madam Chair, when someone pays for one of these virtual
That was my
tokens.
point, yeah.
So whenever there is a payment or what is called a conversion, a license is required from the BSP. When there's a conversion from fiat or ordinary money into one of these assets, that's what's covered po under Circular 944 of the BSP. Any conversion or it's not an exchange in a securities in the securities concept, but more of like a money exchange or exchange to another asset. That conversion must be reported and regulated by the BSP. Ganun po yung current setup.
Ms. Johnson, go ahead. Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner
Okay.
Amato.
The third type is actually the creating the ecosystem. It could be by way of an ordinary crypto where you are exchanging Bitcoin to Bitcoin, Bitcoin to Ethereum. There are literally thousands of coins. Though the problem there is it's it's super fluctuating, that you must have heard of Libra of Facebook or UBX of PHX of UBX, a subsidiary of Union Bank. They are called stable coin. The intent of the stable coin, it's backed up by a collateral. It could be deposits, it could be bank securities or whatever collateral, with the intent for that not to be fluctuating. And basically that creates already payments via the pathways actually being used is like Ethereum pathway. So it's basically technology when it comes to that. Now, may I give some highlights of why the coin offering or the data offering is actually quite important. There is a startup, just an example. It's Blinkist. When they practically went bankrupt because they don't have any funding, loans get denied. And unfortunately, when it comes to the crypto world, there's a lot of fake offerings. Businesses are closing. Well, businesses are closing when you are a startup. There's a high probability of it closing anyway. But in the case of Blinkist, they were able to revive, got funding through a coin offering and doing extremely well. From someone who's bankrupt to worth hundreds of millions. And Blinkist is an app where, just a sample of an app where it was funded by a angel investor through currency offering. The thing about the digital money is putting the trust in the digital money. And for coin offerings, the one in investment similar to Blinkist, in 2018, the world has actually came up with 18 billion in terms of investment. In fact, it has already doubled in 2019. The problem, though, is there's the failure of the ICOs is quite high, and some are actually scams. Again, we mentioning about the utility and the security, the Blinkist is on the security token where it's an investment. And the transfer is via the virtual currency to purchase in exchange of quote unquote ownership in that company, while the utilities, as mentioned, is similar to rewards. The thing about when we're talking about the wallet out there, how do you secure a wallet out there? Of course, some of the things that we have not even discussed is the cybersecurity, the hacking, and of course the abuse. And the abuse is unfortunately happening more rampant at the moment. And as mentioned, they're not. Most of them are not actually registered with the BSP. And in FinTech Alliance, what we're doing is we're putting strong governance in technology. Because historically, and this is a World Bank slide, what will compose of how or why would fraud happen? It's called an ROP. You have rationalization, you have opportunity, and you have pressure. The pressure and opportunity is actually out there in the market, while the rationalization is something that you need to embed in terms of ethics. We're happy to say, as far for FinTech Alliance, we call ourselves the good guys, that we have implemented code of ethics and code of conduct. And this is where, when you're experimenting the use of the wallet, you may find that the countries like Japan, with strong ethical, would have a better place, and we hope that the companies in the Philippines will do the same. So how do you put trust in the digital money? Where in the crypto it's lacking regulation, while in the banks it's overly regulated, we think there's got to be an equilibrium. As mentioned by Senator Drilon, the revised corporation code is putting governance in there. The revised corp code includes 20% independent directors, and that's one of the things that the FinTech Alliance corporations are about to implement. And that initiatives being in public interest would in fact place more trust in that system. In addition to that, as a summary of the regulations out there, they are the 944 is the virtual currency. There's the Philippine ID system, which can be by way of a wallet as well, eventually, or biometric. The new CB Act allows now the central bank to give exchanges, licenses payment system, which is very new, the amended is 1049, is putting again regulations to that. Philippine Innovation Act, sponsored by DTIDOST, is promoting startup corporations. So there's actually quite a few, and we're happy that the Philippines has been open to all of these changes. And if we do not have that regulation, we're happy that Bangko Sentral and SEC, with other regulators, are actually forming what we call the sandbox approach. It's a test and learn, and we're hoping to be partner on that one as well. Either that, or there would be under public consultation. As for the CESA, there are existing regulations with the intent of it being offshore. As mentioned, it's actually called Offshore Virtual Currency Business Rules and Regulations. And I understand that's the one that may have been abused. Okay, so, all right. But of course, when we're looking at this, the digitalization is borderless. In fact, it's happening quite intensively. A lot of the banks, 12% of the global banks have shifted into it. And and again, and this is where, again, we want to highlight that as far as the Alliance Group is concerned, we are putting ethics and governance in technology, which we think is a major tool in terms of hopefully maybe not eradicating, but preventing all of these fly-by-night operators.
Thank you, Ms. Tiongson, for the presentation. Actually, what we're trying to do is play catch up here. We can't really prevent the evolution of things, as particularly in the financial world. But I would like to ask maybe Governor Diokno, are you for? There is a suggestion to have a crypto asset task force. Do we feel like we need to have something like this?
For the creation of such a task force.
So this task force will be composed of the SEC,
SEC, BSP, and CESA.
and CESA. Okay.
Madam Chair, and probably the Bureau of Internal Revenue should be included, because I'm looking always at the tax aspect of this. When a USEC of DOF attended a previous hearing, he would say that they are interested in taxing this for services. In the United States, they tax this as a property. So there's a big whale of difference between property and services. So BIR should be included, especially, Madam Chair.
Instead of BIR, I USEC from the Department of Finance.
Yes.
Okay.
And perhaps, Madam Chair, in the extreme, I would probably include DOLE, because it has been reported that transactions amounting to 2.3 million a month involving our OFWs are involved. So nakakatakot po ito. Baka yung iba scam, baka yung iba kung saan mapunta. Kawawa naman yung OFW natin, nagpakahirap sa Saudi Arabia, tapos may scam lang dito. So in the task force setup, I would involve DOLE, Madam Chair, with your permission.
I think Senator Tolentino, you're right about us being cautious, particularly for our OFWs, but perhaps to limit also the number of those involved, because many hands may spoil the broth. Perhaps baka yung BIR mangolekta na, wala pang kinikita, no? Ano kaya sila po yung resource which can be changing or rotating DOLE and the BIR. But I'm not even sure if it's within us to legislate the composition of this task force. But you think we can do that, and with your help and expertise, we can have a Senate oversight for this?
Hindi po ako expert. It just so happened one of my staff lawyers, yung thesis niya is about cryptocurrency. So I was educated. But to really caution all of us, siguro may I suggest, Madam Chair, to the BSP Governor to slow down a bit. Pag-aralan mo na to. If I may add, before the task force is organized, ang dami pong sunod-sunod ngayon na scam. Sa Japan, ang nawala, $530 million, Cointech, January of 2018. Los Angeles, May 2019, $26 million, Pacheco case. And then in Korea, targeting the elderly and retirees, 21.2 billion won, equivalent to $18.7 million, nawala. And then India, $2 billion. So, siguro medyo slow down tayo. I'm saying this because you issued a clearance for the Union Bank of the Philippines to go ahead. Eh baka pumila na yung iba, baka what will prevent the other banks from following suit? So, pending the completion of the task force suggested by the good chair, eh medyo mag-slow down muna tayo sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. I'm not totally against this. Baka makatulong pero nakakatakot. Well, even the definition of arbitrage, yung exchanges, wala pa tayo nun eh. I've been comparing the laws of Japan with the 944 circular BSP. Talagang malayo. So, if we can slow down a bit, nakakatakot po, Madam Chair, dahil usong-uso sa magagaling ang Pilipino dun sa mga scam. Baka maunahan pa natin yung leading US case is US versus Shavers sa Texas. Ganon din yung nangyari. The Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States na involved na rin. So, ang gulo nito. Hindi pa natin to nafa-fathom kung ganong kagulo ito. Later on, baka magsisi tayo. Pero my suggestion is to slow down and then have that task force really go into the details, the nitty-gritty on how we will be involved in a synchronized, centralized regulatory scheme with taxation.
Okay, the point of the senator is well taken. We are really aware of the risk involved in these transactions, and we're going slow because this is really there's vulnerability. We have to think of consumer protection, and there's also risk to financial stability. So we'll go slow on this. Okay.
Thank you for also your input sa Senator Tolentino. It's good that you have a staff member who actually did the thesis on this, and perhaps we can benefit also from an orientation regarding this because madalas naloloko tayo pag hindi natin talagang naiintindihan lahat eh. Kaya I really think that we can initiate some sort of a gathering between the SEC and then CESA and the BSP so that we'll have this task force at least to study setting one up. But with the indulgence also of my colleague, Senator Tolentino, we also have other topics here to cover. Certainly, we don't have a particular conclusion yet for the cryptocurrency or the fintech, or we need to be able to study this further before coming up with actual legislation for this, because it might actually muddle the issue more if we get into it definitively at this point. Now, for the ATM fees, kasi ito yung naging issue talaga noon, we had already a very productive discussion with the BSP, but we would like this for the record. We're balancing out the reasonableness, the costs to the banks to provide the service, but at the same time, we can't also overburden our consumers. So ano na ba to? Kasi dati, may regulation yung BSP na hindi pwedeng taasin ang fees ng ATM. Pero ngayon, winidraw na ninyo yan, di ba? Hindi na nire-regulate ng BSP ang fees ng ATM. Ganun ba yung pagkakaintindi ko? Pakilinaw lang po.
Madam Senator, if I may. Actually, to put things in better perspective, yung fees yung pinag-uusapan natin na yung ATM fees sa pag gumamit ng ATM ng ibang bangko at hindi bangko ng depositor. Let's say, ako ho'y nasa Bank A, gagamit ako ng ATM ng Bank B, yun ho yung ATM fees sa pinag-uusapan ho natin. And the ATM fees regarding the fees of my own bank, hindi ho covered yun dun sa increase na sinasabi ho natin. Actually ho, the fees were put on hold since 2013 up to recently. And prices have in fact increased as well. So the fees on ATMs were actually, particularly for the use of ATMs of another bank, were somehow open for evaluation. And what we're trying to point out is that these increases won't be automatic. There is a process that these banks would have to go through. There's an evaluation process. They would have to apply and propose for their fees. And these fees would have to be accompanied by proper justification. No? Yung costing breakdown nila, ano ba ho yung hardware cost, ano yung software cost, ano yung other costs like CCTV, security costs
Meron na po bang nag-apply sa inyo for that?
Meron na hong mga nag-apply at saka meron ho kami mga ibinalik.
So mga magkano ang magiging taas? Kung ang average, yung sinasabi natin yung sa sariling bangko mo lang, di ba? Hindi yung mga acquirer-based charging. Hindi kasama yon. Kasi yon choice mo if you want to use another bank. But
Yes.
if it's within your bank, yan ang pinag-uusapan natin na kailangan mag-apply sa inyo. Ganun
Hindi
ba?
ho, the other way around. The fee that's applied is that kung gagamit ako ng ATM nung ibang bangko at hindi ho nung bangko ko, yun ho yung pinag-uusapan ng increase ng fees. So for banks that want to apply for these changes in fees, they would have to apply with us. So yun ho ang ine-evaluate ho namin.
Okay, ang ine-evaluate yung pakiulit-ulit, yung mga gumagamit ng ibang bangko,
Yung ATM ho ng ibang bangko.
ATM ng ibang
Oo,
bangko.
oo.
Pero
Libre ho yung paggamit ko ng ATM
doon
nung
sa sarili
bangko
kong
ko.
bangko. So sa ngayon, libre yon.
Oho.
Okay. Sigurado ba walang charge kahit 2 piso pagka nagwi-withdraw ka?
Wala ho.
Okay. So, ang sinasabi natin, yung 15 pesos na yun yung pag ibang bangko
Oho.
ang kinukunan mo.
Actually, just to put things in a range, yung presyo ho noon bago na-release na-lift yung moratorium, it ranges from 10 to 15 pesos.
And this is since 2013.
Since 2013.
So now, 2008.
Ano, 2008 ho, tapos 2013 nag-moratorium. Tapos from 2013, hindi ho nag-increase yung mga fees na yan, ilinift ho nung recently lang itong taon.
Okay,
ho
so
na
ngayon
to.
may na-aprubahan na ba kayo?
May mga pinoprocess ho, may mga ine-evaluate. Marami na hong return because marami rin ho, the prices are not within reason. Because as I mentioned, we have to evaluate them and they have to justify yung reasonability. Yung present range ho, na yun, as I mentioned earlier, is 10 to 15.
So ngayon, yung mga nag-apply sa inyo, ano yung average increase?
Normally ho, there are those that are still within the range of 10 to 15, and there are those that have gone a little bit beyond the 10 to 15.
Which is what, 20?
We have not approved anything that is 20. So the reasonable space that we're going to is somewhere around, I think there was a mention in a press release earlier, somewhere around the 1 to 3 peso range. So if let's say, yung bangko ko na yon, 11 pesos ang charge, and yung mga ibang bangko, 11 pesos ang charge for using their ATMs ng mga hindi nila depositor, maaring yung charge pareho or within the range of 1 to 2 peso increase.
Okay. Napag-usapan din natin sa briefing, salamat nga pala, Governor, ha? Binigyan mo kami ng update. Para din marinig din ni Senator Tolentino, dahil nga dito sa nakaambang na ATM increase, meron din silang panukala or proposition dito sa mga bangko. Di ba pag pupunta tayo sa mga mall, nakalagay lahat siya ng mga ATM, no? Dapat malinaw ang pagka-display ng mga babayaring fees sa bawat transaction. Kaya para nagsha-shopping ka rin, saan ba merong pinakamura na efficient? Kasi ganito yon. Naintindihan ko rin yung punto din ng iba na syempre yung serbisyo, di ba? Yung kuryente nun, yung pagme-maintain, tapos yung security, meron din gastos yung bangko doon. Kaya yun yung ginagawa ninyong basihan kung papayagan nyo ba ang pag-increase o hindi. Yun, tama ba yung aking pagkakaintindi?
Actually, what we're pushing forward is a market-based competition. So, yung publiko ay nakakapili to make their own well-informed decisions. So, at tama ho kayo, Senator, because yung requirement ho, bago ho, let's say, may na-approvean, bago ho i-promulgate ho yan, kailangan yung mga pricing ho, nakapaskil, at saka yung mga depositors are well-informed. Kung let's say, in an area by which maraming ATMs, iba-iba ho yung presyo nun. I-forward yung mga depositor na sinasabi, kung gagamit kayo ng ATM, nitong ATM na to, at hindi kayo depositor ng bangko na ito ang sisingilin sa inyo. Kailang it doesn't stop there. Because if the depositor ng ibang bangko opts not to continue with the transaction, pwede niya i-cancel yung transaction at lumipat sa ibang ATM para lang makita niya itong mga ATM na ito mas mababa nung presyo dun sa mga iba.
Lang
May
may
tawag
recourse.
din namin.
Kung nakita nila na ganito yung
Oo.
charge, lipat sila, walang bayad pa yun.
The requirement is that dun sa machine mismo, yung rate nung using the ATM from a depositor that's not with the bank, kailangan lumabas, pati na rin yung rate within around the machine area, kailangan rin nakalabas doon. At saka bago ho siya mag-proceed ng transaction, mag-yes or no ho siya. Now, kung no, lilipat siya sa ibang ATM na kung gugustuhan niya na mas mura.
Meron akong isang katanungan, ito para din sa mga consumers na nagpapatanong sa akin. Di ba usually pagka meron isang bangko na sinasabi ito, regulated by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or member PDIC, may mga ganon, no? Kunyari ikaw ay nag-avail ng isang cellphone ad ng may online lending o may lending, di ba yung isang kumpanya pangalan yata Home Credit So makakakuha ka ng pera sa kanila. Mas mataas daw di umanong interest pero kukunin yung pangalan ng kamag-anak mo, kaibigan mo, tapos siguro dahil wala naman sila talagang magagawa sa'yo, hihiyain ka. Yun ang panakot nila. Kanino pwede pumunta ang ating mga kababayan? Ito ba illegal na pwede kang gawin ng ganon? Hindi ba, ano bang government agency ang may jurisdiction over such a practice?
Yeah, Madam Chair, so actually that particular entity, Home Credit, and for those that are registered with us, that are non-bank, so these are financing and lending companies po, registered with the SEC. So sa amin po yung jurisdiction. In fact, we have already put out our regulation on unfair collection practices to put a stop to the activities of some of these online lenders na
Nasaan ang regulation nyo na yon? Yan. So, are countrymen actually aware of that? So, pagka kunwari may nakita kayong pero kung hindi nakarehistro sa inyo, yun ang problema.
Pag hindi po nakarehistro sa amin, tulad ng ginawa po namin last week, and if we are informed that they are acting as providing online lending activities, diretso na pong, if they are corporations, we have moved to issue cease and desist orders or to close them down, and then moving towards prosecution na po. Because as pointed out by my colleague, Commissioner Lee, if you don't have a license from the SEC to engage in online lending, yan po ay labag sa batas.
Pero ano lang yun, 50,000, 6 to 12.
Yun po yung challenge siya ngayon.
6 months, okay. Maikli lang ba to? Meron ka bang presentation? Ano yung mga, okay. So, ano ang magiging payo ninyo doon sa mga kababayan natin na nakakatanggap ng text at sinasabi, pwede kayong humiram ng ganitong pera, walang kinakailangan na collateral, ito lang ang mga impormasyon na hingi namin. Ano ang dapat nilang gawin para hindi sila mabiktima ng ganito? Kasi isa pa yan na tanong natin. Pag ikaw ay nangangailangan, kapit ka sa patalim. So siguro tatanungin din natin si Governor Jokno, meron bang paraan para humiram ang ating mga kababayan sa bangko na hindi naman napakahirap makakuha ng approval at ano bang pinaka-basic na pangangailangang collateral para makakuha? Kasi ngayon, ang alam lang natin, sanglaan o kaya online dahil mahirap na pumunta sa bangko di ba? Yun yung nagiging problema kaya nabibiktima ng ganito Okay, so pumunta muna tayo kay Gov Jokno, ano pong pwedeng gawin ng ating mga kababayan? Kunyari, teacher ka, gusto mong humiram ng pera.
Actually, maganda ho yung nagawa na ninyo Tapos na yung national ID system. Because before you can open an account, yung tinatawag na KYC requirement, 2 government-issued ID. It's yung mga ordinary farmers naman, wala naman silang passport, wala naman lisensya. They cannot open an ID, ang bank account, because wala nga sila nun. Now, with the national ID system, yun na lang, isa na yun, makakapagbukas na po sila ng bank account.
Para umutang.
Para umutang,
Ano yung pinaka-minimum? Or sa mga...
depende na ho sa mga bangko yun kung anong patakaran nila. Meron naman mga iba-ibang programa ho, especially for the small and medium scale industries. They can borrow. Tapos may batas din kayong pinasana na in-expand na ho yung definition ng what may be a collateral. Hindi na lang lupa ho. May mga iba like yung inventory. May,
napasa na po ba yun?
Napasa na po.
Yes, Madam Chair. That's actually, I think, the good governor was referring to the PPSA, which is actually in allowing mobile assets as alternative collateral for MSMEs.
But you have to be registered.
Personal
as,
Security
enterprise.
Act, no? Halimbawa, may kontrata ka sa Public Works, no? Nakakuha ka na, pwede mo nang ihiram yun. Yung award na yun, yung na-award ka na gano'n.
Batas yun for the record ulit? Yung
Personal Security Act, right?
personal security.
Napasa na rin po ninyo yan.
Kailan bang napasa yun? Naalala ba niyo?
It was signed by the president 3 months ago. 6 months ago.
Okay. We have to familiarize ourselves with that.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds very promising, but our countrymen need to know how to avail of it. Senator Tolentino.
Just two questions before I shuttle back again to the other hearing. Recently, while we're talking about the ATM fees, recently, unannounced, those involved in utilizing their cell phones to transact with banks were meted certain fees again. So, ano ba talaga yung bagong rule dito? Wala ata sa regulations eh. Pag ginamit mo yung cellphone mo, nag-transact ka sa bangko, may fees na rin yun. Hindi ATM ha. And why is there a need for that?
Actually, thank you, Senator Tolentino. Let me just relate it to another initiative, the initiative which we call the National Retail Payment System. Doon sa National Retail Payment System, basta ho yung bangko ay mayroong approved na mobile application to do internet banking, nakakapaglipat na ho ng funds from one bank account to another bank account of another bank. Yun ho consistent trend with our approach that kailangan ho yung pricing are very transparent, market-based,
Ginawa nila sa
at saka
Biocor
reasonable.
Yung
Ano
mga
ho
ibang preso
oho.
doon, nag-bank account, utilizing their mobile phones.
Oho.
Go ahead.
Tapos right now, even in the BSB website, nakapaskil ho yan, magkano yung mga presyo na ino-offer ng mga different banks when it comes to these transfers of payments, which we call retail payments. May mga ibang bangko nga ho, libre ho yan. May mga ibang bangko naman, medyo malupit. Kaya lang, again, it's competitive advantage, kaya kailangan nakapaskil rin, at saka alam mo nung publiko para they can make the right choice. Ang ano ho natin is that, kasi iba-iba ho rin ho yung profile ng consumer na yun, at mga depositor, may mga depositor ho, lalo na yung mga kabataan katulad ko, gustong-gusto gamit ho ng electronic devices. Meron naman ho mga iba na
Para kang yung isang party list, ano ah. Rationale behind that. My final question, Madam Chair, and this should be off the record, ComSec take note. I attended the hearing last week of an MMD involving MMDA. Just a few minutes ago, I was at the DPWH budget hearing, and then probably this might interest our good chairperson here. Whenever I talk about the necessity of having the Pasig River Ferry, ang sinasabi lahat sa akin, kanina si Secretary Villar, off the record ito, tanungin nyo si Secretary Jokno. Kasi si Secretary Jokno daw ang sa Pasig River Ferry. Sabi ko, Bangko Sentral na si Secretary Jokno, and it would interest the good chairperson sa public services. We have to revive that Pasig River Ferry. Gusto ko ngang butasan na yan, Madam Chair, hanggang Eastwood sa Libis. Meron lang 2 bato ron. So, MMDA practically abandoned the Pasig River Ferry. And then, a few minutes ago, I heard from Secretary Villar, hindi rin sila makagalaw kasi there is a task force which you had. I'm not so sure if you're still interested in that given given
ang
your
ano po, ang
functions in BSP.
function dati yan, Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission, headed by the DBM yan.
Then
Ta-
the Pasig
tas-
River head was fired with the president 2 weeks ago.
Correct. Pinaltanan niya si Mato na ngayon, di ba, ang Pasig River. Itutuloy po natin. Kung ako lang, itutuloy ko. Kasi nariyan na yun eh. Itutuloy natin.
Sa budget,
Ang
there is no
kinakausap, gusto ko kausapin siya, Secretary Tugade. Kasi transport siya naman yan eh, di ba?
kami na ni Senator Grace ang makipag-usap.
Hindi,
So,
you know,
the
to me,
reason-
it makes a lot of sense, It makes a lot of sense na develop mo talaga yun.
Yes,
yung,
I agree with you. Kaya
from
ako-
Marikina to whatever, sa downstream, 30 minutes lang.
Hanggang
Kaya-
Libis is
correct.
good.
Oo.
So,
Oo.
because of your new function, hindi na ikaw.
Hindi na po ako, but I just got a text message from the original, we will push through with it. Kung
Yes, can you probably text Secretary Tugade that you're
yan,
relinquishing?
kinakausap ko na ho siya.
Okay,
Kinakausap ko si
So,
Secretary.
maliwanag na yan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yun eh, transport yun eh.
Ang Task Force Tolentino. Lahat na, nanganak na lahat eh, konektado lahat yung mga different government agencies. Thank you for enlightening us again on that particular issue. So, there are other topics that we would like to discuss in our future hearings, particularly the Agri-Agra, the Consumer Welfare Act. For right now, I think that we will move forward with more technical consultations within the different groups that are present here today. Unfortunately, our resource persons from the consumer sector didn't actually show up today. We could have heard the extent of the effects of this the new phenomenon on financial technology or fintech. So, unless anyone would like to add anything more to the discussion, I will adjourn this hearing at this point. Please feel free to continue your lunch in the meantime. Yes.
Madam Chair, we just a short statement and a clarification. We welcome actually the resolution filed by Senator Tolentino and the Senate bill filed by Senator Marcos. We've actually had an opportunity to look over it. Ito pong digital assets, the terminologies nga keep changing, and it would be good, this is a good venue to inform the Senate of the initiatives we've already undertaken.
Yung broadest definition, digital.
Sa ngayon po, ang nahanap po namin internationally, the catch-all term is digital asset.
So that includes cryptocurrency, so digital assets.
Cryptocurrency, crypto token, digital token. The basic concept and the definition, which we've already included in our rules, is that there's a digital representation of rights or value.
So itong mga online, mga lending, kasama ba yan sa digital asset? Hindi, di ba?
Hindi po siya kasama sa digital asset,
Pero
but
nasa
a broader and
financial tech siya.
Opo. So a broader concept from digital asset is what they call fintech,
Okay.
or financial technology, where technology is being used to simplify, streamline, assist financial activity.
Okay.
So dati
Kasama
po,
doon yung assets, kasama din doon yung
kasama
lending.
po yung assets, kasama yung ano. Ang ano ko lang po, ang tanong ko lang po, because the good Senator Tolentino asked us to go slow. Actually, we've been going slow for several years. There's actually a fintech task force, a working group already as part of the financial sector forum that includes the Bangko Sentral, the SEC, the Insurance Commission, and the Philippine Deposit Insurance
How often
Corporation.
do you meet? Or is there a secretariat already?
There's a secretariat already. We
Under-
meet quarterly. The chair is the good governor of the BSP. And we have already, kaya nga po coordinated po yung moves ng Bangko Sentral and the SEC.
So meron na palang task force in a way, di ba?
Opo,
So
opo.
kayo na yon. May this committee request that you submit to us a report on your initial deliberations or meetings, and then regularly submit to us para hindi na namin kayo pinapatawag. Kasi kayo naman yung expert dyan eh.
Quarterly, Your Honor.
So if you can furnish us a copy of your report, so that if we have any clarifications, and that's the only time we'll probably get in touch with your office. Because, di ba, breakneck speed nga ang technology eh. So we're playing catch up. So it helps to educate even your lawmakers so that we don't make arbitrary laws that will not actually help but might be more destructive eh, di ba? So keep us up to date. So in the meantime,
Madam Chair.
any more?
Yes, sir. So that is why, Your Honor, although the good senator said goes, we're actually on the verge now. The BSP has already issued 944. There are reasons why they have issued 944. We've already issued, the SEC has issued its rules on crowdfunding already. We're about to issue our rules on digital asset offering and digital asset exchanges. If there is a need, and we are available to brief your committee on the mechanics, kasi pinag-aralan na po namin ng almost more than a year now, consulting our counterparts in other jurisdictions on how to do. Now, we don't claim to be experts. Sa totoo lang po, no one in the world right now claims to have a complete handle because the technology is moving so fast. Pero
Nakakahilo, di ba? Hirap.
opa, pero
Ano,
more or less naka-catch up na po kami. Handa po kami magbigay ng kahit anong briefing po sa inyo kasi tulad ng pong sinabi
but excuse me, Commissioner, imagine kayo nasa SEC, di ba? It takes you a year to kind of have a grasp of it. Can you imagine the regular consumers or even us? That's why I was saying, in as much as we would like to ask questions for legislation, this is also an actual learning meeting for us. So okay, so just keep us regularly abreast.
Yes, ma'am. And that's why we offer po to provide whatever briefing the committee would like. Kasi because however fast or slow tayo po, or the consumers, mas mabilis pa po yung mga businesses. So the reason why we're coming up with the regulation is, in the absence of regulation, anything goes po, and it cannot be anything goes. Kasi at the end, ang magkakaproblema yung ordinary Filipino.
So
That's why we have to.
ano itong task force na meron kayo?
Fintech working group po under the financial.
So it's a working group.
Yes.
But you were saying that there are certain things that we need to amend, right? Yun nga yung batas
Yun po sa online lending.
Online
yun po sa online lending, may suggestions po kami. Doon po sa digital assets, meron na po kaming regulation based on the current legal framework. But Senator Marcos has filed a bill which is very similar to legislation filed in Thailand, which we think would be helpful, na hindi naman taliwas po dun sa regulation namin. But even without legislation, we believe there is enough legal basis under the Securities Regulation Code to regulate the securities, the investment taking, which is the most Siguro po one area that we need immediate help from the Senate is to clarify nga po the limits of jurisdiction between us and entities like the CESA. Kasi ang perception po, kaya nga we've tried to discuss with CESA
So
and work
dapat
together.
MOU kayo, di ba?
Yun po yung workaround po namin kasi sa pagbabasa po namin sa batas, it seems that in the zone, hindi po kami ang nag-a-apply pero sila. But ang batas naman namin ay nationwide, and in this case where certain people are alleged to be engaged in providing securities or selling securities abroad illegally, ang pangalan po ng Pilipinas ang natatamaan regardless of whether, di na tinatanong kung sa CESA ba yan o sa SEC.
Okay.
So I think clarity from the legislature would help.
Nako. Mag-usap muna kayo tapos bigyan nyo kami ng MOU.
Madam Chair.
Mahirap
Yes,
na
Madam
naman.
Chair.
Sir?
Okay, Madam Chair, actually we just like to contribute to the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies because we came up with a book. Well, this actually we call it the Jungle Handbook for FinTech practitioners. You said it a while ago that it's actually the FinTech world is in a way very absurd, and it's not yet really defined as regards its because it's infinite in a way because of various technologies. So we would like to share this book with the committee.
Please, thank you. We will appreciate that. That will be my bedtime reading,
Yeah,
so
this
I
is
can
actually the
probably fall
Bible.
asleep faster.
Yeah,
No,
this is the taxonomy of fintech in the Philippines. Thank you.
okay. So today, let me just summarize. Thank you, all of you, for coming today. This has been a very productive discussion, although there's still a lot of ambiguity. We were able to clarify a few things that we might be able to work on immediately. So, as regards to online lending, we found out that the primary problem revolves around the proliferation of unregistered companies that operate as lending apps without authority. Um, Alam mo, ang dami nitong mga summary, and I think I'm just going to read that to myself. But for now, what we can do is to get the working group of where was this? Okay, so the fintech working group of the SEC, the BSP, and you mentioned another one,
And PDIC, Your Honor.
Insurance Commission and PDIC.
Under the financial sector.
So I will ask for your for quarterly reports and what you've met about so far. And then we will also have to look at our online lending practices, although you've had already your regulations out in place. It is also, so now we have to talk about more about the digital assets later on. I would like to thank you also for clarifying the apprehensions about the increase in the ATM fees. So ngayon naman pala, hindi naman basta-basta pwede. Meron pa ring approval dapat mula sa central bank. So with that, this hearing is currently adjourned, but we will continue to work together in the future to have better and more meaningful regulations for this rapidly shifting fintech. Thank you.